According to some recent article published just a couple of months ago, but in 2020, it seems that a lot of games, more specifically 80% of the released games on Steam, failed to make even $5,000 in 2 weeks. But if you're familiar with game releases, then you know that the game makes most of its money in the first days and week of its release. That means that a lot of game developers fail to achieve any sustainable income with their games. My question to you right now is, do you want to be one of those 80% people that fail to make a living from their game on Steam or on other platform? Or do you want to be in that 20% that takes away some cash and makes a living and lives to tell a story of another game? If you want to learn how to create a successful game, stay tuned because this is what we are going to discuss in this video. In this video, I'll present you 5 tips that will improve your chances in getting into that 20% away from that 80% of the game developers. It's no secret, the statistics don't lie. 80% of the game developers fail. It's a matter of if you want to accept it or not. If you don't want to accept it and take the blue pill, as in Matrix, then you will make what you want, you'll make your dream game come true, but then you'll get back to a regular job, you won't have any game development career, at least of course if you don't work already in the industry, but not for your own games, but for some other people's games. But if you are in the other category of people that want to make a living for themselves, then stay tuned because these 5 tips that I'm gonna tell you might make that difference. First, a small disclaimer. No one can guarantee you 100% rate success, not even less than that. But if you follow these tips, you might improve your chances just enough to get out there and make a difference for yourself and for other people, because in the end, those people are gonna play and experience your game. Before we get started with the tips, I want to point out that also they are essential tips, but there are a lot of more things that we need to cover. In this channel, we talk about the game dev mindset and how that is a whole game changer for you and your career as a game developer. So if you're interested in amplifying your game dev mindset and be on a successful track, then consider subscribing to this channel. Tip number 1, treat your game as a product. And what I mean by this is when you release a game or a demo, bad reviews might start pouring in. And speaking of bad reviews, I have a funny, interesting story about reading negative reviews popping up right now. But what's important is that even in reviews that state that your game is trash or even my dog could have made your game, there might lie some truth. And what I mean by this is if you take a step back and analyze what you have promised in the game's description, in the game's trailers, in other parts around the social media of features, and you haven't delivered on those, the people that were expecting those features might feel that they have been tricked in buying the game. So they'll not say, hey, I wish that feature was implemented. They would say, your game is trash and we'll get a refund. So instead, take a step back, analyze the situation, and clearly see and define what you can take from those negative reviews, and don't put them to heart, but more put them into practice. But a lesson here is don't overpromise and underdeliver. And an example here that comes into my mind is No Man's Sky, which promised multiplayer and other features and underdelivered. And initially, when it was released, it got bombed with negative reviews all over the place. Now they seem to have redeemed themselves, but it's better to avoid because the first impression counts the most. Another thing, by treating your game as a product, is the fact that you have to clearly define what you want from your game. A lot of game developers go down the feature rabbit hole and they add feature and feature and feature and they fail to release the game. But you need to say, hey, stop, this is enough. I have my core game loop, I have my main features, the game is fun enough, I should release it. So you should clearly define what you want to achieve and treat your game as a product. Tip number 2, create a community. So don't work in a black box sealed in your house for 2 years straight and emerge victorious with a game, because that's not how real life works. Instead, if you have a demo or something to show, start showing up. On Twitter, for example, there is the hashtag Screenshot Saturday, or on Facebook groups or on Reddit, it doesn't matter, people need to see your game. Start forming a community around it. I recommend Discord for this because it's very easy to set up, and there are some success stories which I'll link in the description if you are interested in that. But start creating the community as soon as possible and try to listen to your fans, because in the end they will create the velocity for your game necessary for other people to see it on Steam, for example. Tip number 3, know when to quit. This is really important. You might think like, oh, I have the best idea in the world and it will become the best game in the world, of course, right? No, it's wrong. You might think you have the best idea. First, if you put it in an actual demo, you might realize yourself that the idea is garbage. But if you still don't realize, and the idea might have some potential, but other people might say, hey, your idea is bad. If too many people say this, they might have something valuable saying that. So you have to rethink it and see if it's worth pursuing that or not. And also, knowing when to quit is really important. If you get into some overly complex systems that you cannot solve yourself, or they take too much time or effort, that you thought that your game is gonna be a straightforward development and it turned out to be really hard, take a step back, think if it's worth pursuing this, and if it's not, then you should just quit it and start something new. Tip number 4, stay motivated. It's no secret that game development as a hobby or as a full-time job is not a walk in the park. These instant gratifications that we don't receive in it will make our life harder. Like writing 100 lines of code to just see a cube rotating on the screen is not fun. So what can you do about it? Of course, there are a lot of tips and tricks which I present in this video about how to stay motivated. But right now, just to keep it simple, you can either do another hobby like cycling or reading books, or something that keeps your mental health in check so that you can overcome this instant gratification problem that we struggle to handle. Tip number 5, finish your game. And this is really important. A lot of people abandon their projects, and it's okay to abandon your project if you have tested the market and there is no potential in your idea, or you cannot pull it off with your current skills. But if you release a game, make sure to make it fun as well, because even if the game is functional but it's not fun, people will comment, hey, your game is dull or your game is boring. And then probably, I don't know if you'll get refunds or not, but you will definitely not get traction on your game. If you don't know how to make a game fun, then I have this video for you with examples showing you exactly how to do it. Bonus tip. I see a lot of game developers focusing only on the process of creating a game, which is totally cool. Learning programming, art, game design, level design, and more is a fantastic adventure, and this is why we are all into it. But this is not enough to create a game. We need much more than this. And two things that come into my mind right now are marketing and business. And let's take them both separately. So for business, you'll need to create a business around your game. That means setting up a company, knowing how to do taxes, knowing how to manage your company, because you will need those skills. As for marketing, most people don't understand what it is, because as developers, well, we focus on developing. So that's kind of like something magical out there, but it shouldn't be like that. So marketing in simple plain terms means making people aware of your game. So how can you do that simply? I suggest using social media, because that's the easiest way to make people aware of your game. If you opt for paid ads, remember to have a set clear goal in your mind. For example, getting wish lists on Steam. It's really important, because otherwise you might be wasting your money. All the mentioned sources and of course the article that was stated in the beginning of the video are in the links down below. And one fun fact that I've seen recently, there is a post on Reddit, and I'm not gonna give the link on that, but I'm gonna tell you the story about it. So there are these people creating a game for 4 years, I think, that got like 15,000 wish lists on Steam, and it failed to gain traction and it was a flop. You remember that 2 weeks sales. If the game doesn't get traction, it gets lost in the sea of other games which are constantly released. So what can we learn from this quite fast is do not spend 4 years creating a game. Of course, they did a demo, which is good, but try to opt for something unique and try to put that really in perspective. Try to show people what is unique about your game. Try to always be connected with the game developer world and with the real world. It's really important to make this connection and to see what's trending, what's not trending anymore, and try to make the best out of it. Of course, with what information you have. Some sites here that come into my mind right now are, for example, Steam Spy and of course Google Trends, which are quite relevant for our industry. Try to spot where others have failed so you can learn from their mistakes. This is crucial because the only resource that you have limited is your time. These are my 5 tips, and if you implement them in your mindset, they will amplify your game's potential. And speaking of amplifying potential, if you are interested in amplifying your game developer mindset, then this channel is exactly for you. So consider subscribing, because the videos here are about real stories about how we can make a living out of game development and how we can succeed in this sea of games that are constantly getting released. I'm Adrian and I'm signing out.